Well, welcome and thank you for attending the Washington Transfer Degree 101 webinar hosted by the Joint Transfer Council. We're going to get, I know there are probably still a few more people signing on, and so we are going to get started. My name is Julie. I'm the Director of Policy and Academic Affairs for the Council of Presidents. If you could just show me a raise of hands and let me know that you guys can all hear me, that would be great. Okay. Wonderful. I'm joined today by three panelists who will be presenting this afternoon and responding to questions and answers. Debbie Crouch, Senior Associate Registrar, Seattle Pacific University. Janice DeCosmo, Associate Dean, Undergraduate Academic Affairs, University of Washington. And Michael Singletary, Registrar at Whatcom Community College. Let's find out who's in the audience. Using the raise your hand function, please raise your hand if you work at a community and technical college. Great. Please raise your hand if you work at a public or private four-year institution in the state of Washington. Wonderful, quite a few of you. Wow, quite a few of you. And also, if you want to raise your hand if you work for a state agency or an organization. And then finally, if we have anybody who works for an external organization, works for an external organization or the legislature. Great. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation. To ask questions, please use the Q&A feature to type your question. At the end of the presentation, I will read the questions and our panelists will respond. The webinar will be recorded and posted to YouTube to share. Each of you will receive an email with information about how to obtain a recording of the webinar in the next day or so. If for some reason you don't get that email or that connection, please feel free to email me. I'm Julie Garver. My contact information is at the end of the slideshow. Are there any questions before we begin? All right, not seeing any questions, we're going to go ahead and Janice DeCosmo from the University of Washington is going to kick it off.
Hello, everybody. We're in a great situation with regard to transfer in the state of Washington. For more than 45 years, Washington's public baccalaureate institutions, community and technical colleges, and our private nonprofit four-year colleges and universities have worked together to provide students with clearly identified and direct pathways from two-year to four-year institutions. The backbone of the transfer system in Washington state is the direct transfer agreement, or the D degree. And that generally satisfies the lower division general education requirements at all of the state baccalaureate institutions and most of the private nonprofit schools. The collaboration that established the TA also led to the development of accepted associate's degree. That's the Associates of Science Transfer, or AST degree, and that was developed in 2000. In the years following, Washington's higher education institutions made programs that are basically different flavors of the degrees. So the cast of characters of our system, there are institutions in each sector, community and technical colleges, and the public, private, nonprofit 4 years are the primary actors in the collaborative development and implementation of these transfer degrees. The institutions collaborate through two multi-sector councils. One is the Joint Transfer Council, also known as JTC. It's focused on developing new transfer degree pathways, monitoring and updating existing pathways, and establishing multi-sector transfer policy. The Inter-College Relations Commission, or ICRC, which is a part of the Washington Council on High School-College Relations, is focused on implementing and improving communication among universities and colleges, informing policy proposals, and identifying and helping to solve transfer problems. And these two councils work very closely together. Each sector of higher education is represented by either a sector agency or an organization. Four-year institutions collaborate and are represented through the Council of Presidents, or COP. The private nonprofit institutions collaborate and are represented through the Independent Colleges of Washington, or ICW. And the community colleges collaborate and are represented through the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, SBCTC. The Washington Student Achievement Council, or WASAC, we call it, is a state agency that supports increased educational attainment in Washington. It is a convening and collaborative partner to the institution. Now, before we get into the details of the degrees themselves, there's a few more key terms to do. And some we've already talked about, such as the DTA, the AST, and the MRPs, and some additional terms on this chart. The BI, or public or nonprofit private baccalaureate institution. The Council of Presidents, or COP, an association of Washington's 6 public baccalaureate degree granting colleges and universities. COP strives to be a common voice for the public baccalaureate sector and is a respected and trusted resource for decision makers on issues affecting public higher education. And the Independent Colleges of Washington is the association of the 10 private nonprofit liberal arts-based colleges in Washington. And these include Gonzaga University, Heritage University, Pacific Lutheran Martin's University, Seattle Pacific University, Seattle University, the University of Puget Sound, Walla Walla University, Whitman College, and Whitworth University. The State Board for Community and Technical Colleges is governed by a 9-member governor-appointed board, and it's responsible for administering the Community and Technical Act and providing leadership and coordination for the Washington State system of 34 public community and technical colleges. Common Course Numbering, or CCN, and Common Course Numbering makes course transfer easy between and among Washington and technical colleges. The common courses are delivered by a number of community and technical colleges, and they have official catalog descriptions that are similar enough to be accepted as equivalent at a receiving 2-year college for transfer. We often refer to credit in the major, and that's opposed to general education credit, and that credit satisfies specific major requirements for graduation. General education credit, or also referred to as general university requirements or the liberal arts core, general university requirements or the liberal arts core are terms that identify a body of credit that provides students with a foundation of learning across a broad range of academic disciplines and cross-discipline research and critical thinking. Typically, not always, students take those core years. General elective credit is college credit. It allows students opportunity to round out their degrees and helps to fulfill the total number of credits required for graduation.
This is Debbie Crouch from SPU. Now Washington's transfer degrees a bit better. Washington's participating higher education institutions primarily rely on 2 statewide transfer agreements to facilitate transfer in 2 4-year. These degrees are the Direct Transfer Agreement Associate Degree, also called the DTA, and the Associate of Science Transfer, or AST degrees. The DTA provides students with a flexible and general transfer degree. More than 90% of transfer degrees completed in Washington are DTAs. The AST has two tracks, track 1 and track 2, that prepare students for math, science, and engineering majors at the baccalaureate level. Students may choose to complete a generic DTA or AST degree, or they may choose to complete a major-related program, or MRP, as a subset of courses within their AST or DTA degree. MRPs help students to choose education distribution areas and their 30 elective credits that will help them prepare for a particular major. For instance, the business MRP requires that students take microeconomics and macroeconomics to fulfill 10 of the 15 social science credits required for the DTA. The MRP gives focus to students' course selection within the framework of the associate degree. Here are some similarities among Washington transfer degrees. Though the DTA and the AST differ, they have some basic principles in common. Students complete any of these transfer degrees at a Washington community or technical college will enter a four-year institution with 90 transferable quarter credits or 60 semester credits and junior standing. And these students will begin at the baccalaureate institution a significant portion of the four-year to be completed. Here are some things you should know, but maybe didn't, about the DTA. DTA carries different titles at the different arts or associative sciences. This means that sometimes when you call DTA, particularly at the four-year school, students may not know what I mean, and you'll need to go back and find out exactly which degree the student completed and possibly even look that up in the catalog of their two-year school to make sure it is the DTA. The DTA is designed to complete the lower division general education requirements for most baccalaureate degrees at Washington's four-year colleges and universities, despite the fact that the distribution of general education courses in the DTA may differ substantially from the four-year institution's own general education. The DTA includes 60 credits of general education courses. The DTA also includes 30 elective credits, some of which may prepare students for classes in their major or fulfill major requirements. The DTA, except when accompanied by the nursing MRP or the music MRP, is a 90 quarter credit or 60 semester credit degree. In summary, the DTA provides students with completion of lower division general education requirements, the opportunity to explore several fields of study through elective courses, and the opportunity to complete at least some credits for a future major. All public four-year colleges and universities, and most private nonprofit four-year institutions do as well. The AST is focused on math and science courses for students preparing for a bachelor's degree in engineering. This degree includes fewer general education courses compared to the DTA to allow for additional math and science at the community and technical college. The AST is not a DTA degree, and it does not all lower division general education requirements and transfer. However, students who complete this degree are likely on par with their counterparts at four-year schools who have also devoted their first 2 years to science and math. And students who transfer must complete some general education courses during their junior and senior year, just as students who began at the four-year school as freshmen and freshmen. The AS tracks. Track 1 is geared towards students planning to transfer into biological sciences, environmental or resource sciences, chemistry, geology, and earth science. Track 2 is geared towards engineering, computer science, physics, and atmospheric science. In summary, the AST degree provides students with completion of lower division general education requirements in a distribution similar to that completed by baccalaureate engineering or science students in their first 2 years, and the opportunity to complete math and science prerequisites in order to transfer and begin upper division work in the major. All public four-year college and universities accept the AST1 and AST2, and many private nonprofit four-year institutions accept one of these degrees or both. MRPs. The MRPs are course plans within the structure of either the DTA or the AST. MRPs focus on specific often multiple four-year institutions, significant prerequisites in the freshman and sophomore year of students. The Joint Transfer Council established a set of criteria to trigger the development of an MRP for a given major. An MRP is considered when the following criteria are all met. One, the number of courses specified as preparation for the major and needed in the first 2 years is substantial. Secondly, several institutions award the bachelor's. Third, a credit gap exists. The total number of credits earned by transfer students who graduate is substantially higher than credits earned by students who started at the baccalaureate institution. Fourth, most transfer students show a pattern of being prepared. And finally, the major is in high demand by students. There are 10 active MRPs. 8 are based on the DTA degree and the AST2 degree. MRPs that can accompany a DTA include biology, business, computer science, construction management, math education, music, nursing, and pre-nursing. MRPs that accompany the AST2 are engineering and engineering technology. Each MRP has a different set of participating four-year colleges and universities, largely determined by which programs are offered. For four-year colleges and universities that do not sign onto the MRP agreements for a DTA or AST will still treat the degree as they would a generic DTA or without the MRP. If you're interested in learning more about the DTA and AST, including greater detail and the structure of the agreements, there are 2 primary resources. We have provided on this PowerPoint screen, and that will be available. You can link out to these resources once are on YouTube. The first resource is the Inter-College Relations Commission Handbook, which provides detail about the transfer agreement and the overall framework in Washington. The second resource found on the website, which houses the current transfer.
Hi, this is Mike at Whatcom Community College. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I have the next few slides. So introduction to the AAS-T degree, otherwise known as the Associate in Applied Science and Transfer degree. The AAST is the Associate in Applied Science, not to be confused with the AST, which is the Associate of Science Transfer degree. The degree focuses on students who are completing a professional technical program at a community or technical college. It includes at least 20 general education credits and may transfer, but it is limited to some credits may transfer to a four-year institution or a baccalaureate of applied sciences degree program. It may transfer the degree to a limited number of four-year institutions or BAS degree programs. And it is critical that students connect with the four-year institutions or programs to determine transferability degree. Is the introduction to the AAS degree. The AAS is focused on not to transfer, but who want to enter the workforce with a two-year degree. Areas of focus include, but aren't limited to, accounting, marketing, business, technology, nursing, computer science, and advanced manufacturing. So in general, the AAS does not transfer to Washington four-year institutions. There are some institutions that may accept the degree when certain criteria are met. Students are encouraged, again, to reach out to the four-year institutions to see what credits will transfer in. Now, a lot of those are probably 30 to 45 credits of general education, and those are going to transfer in. It's just that the whole degree won't transfer in. Set up so that you'll have an opportunity to give it some thought and what you think the answer might be. So over the last 45 years, these are some of the common questions and myths that continue to rise around transfer in Washington. Is there a preference, DTA or the AST? While they are both strong transfer degrees, students should identify the degree that fits their educational goals. Next question, does either the DTA or AST guarantee admission to a four-year institution or admission into major? No, actually, neither. Admission to a four-year institution or major is not guaranteed. Institutions will apply the 90 quarter credits required to complete the DTA or AST to the credits required for a baccalaureate degree. Do students pursuing a DTA still need to focus on a major or area of focus? Absolutely. Students should focus on an area of focus as early as the student knows what their major is going to be. And that way they're aligning themselves with a two-year pathway with a four-year degree, and they're going to graduate using their credits most effectively. May four-year institutions require a higher GPA for admission than the 2.0 GPA required in the DTA or AST? The answer is yes. And they may also require GPAs in certain courses. In particular, like the major course, students transferring into a certain major, that major may require GPAs for those courses in major. If an associate degree has the word transfer in the title, is it designated to fulfill the general education requirements at four-year colleges and universities? No. Only degrees identified as the DTA are designed to meet all or most general education requirements at four-year colleges and universities. Do all associate degrees transfer? No. Again, the AST has limited transferability, and the AAS does not transfer, the degree does not transfer at all. Do some of the MRPs require more than 90 credits? We mentioned that earlier, and that's true for the nursing degree and the music degree. So 135, 101 respectively. So do Washington transfer students lose credits or take longer to graduate than a first-time, first-year student? So the answer is, it's not a clear yes or no, but we do not consider credits earned as lost simply because they may not apply toward the degrees offered at all institutions. Students attend on the way to completing their educational goals. However, Washington transfer students graduate with a bachelor's degree with a similar number of total credits as those who start at four-year institutions as freshmen. So in fact, Washington student transfers with an associate degree and earn bachelor's degree at a much higher rate than students nationally. This ranks #1 in the nation for the average rate at which a community college transfers to a four-year institution earns a bachelor's degree. Professional technical degrees to four-year institutions. And the AAST degree may transfer to specific programs at some of the four-year institutions or bachelor degree programs. Do AASTers fill all the lower division general requirements like DTA degree earners? Answer is no. AST degree earners do not, because fewer lower division general requirements are taken to allow for the math and the science at the 2- and 4-year institution. Can students transfer without a degree? Yes, they can. However, credits are evaluated on a course-by-course basis. Students should determine the best transfer path to meet their educational goals by talking with both the community college and the four-year advisors. So those are some of the common questions. I'm sure you probably have your own questions, so feel free to fill in that Q&A box down there below. Some of the resources that we rely on, there are several available to students, advisors, and our institutions. The Washington State Board of Community, let's do these in order. So there is the Joint Trans Council. There's a link up there for that one. The ICRC, that's the governing body that monitors the transfer degree, the DTA, and the policies that occur between the 2- and 4-year institutions. Washington State Board Technical, SBCTC. There's a breadth of information on policies, agreements, and other resources. And the public and non-private, non-profit 4 years, there are links to their policies, requirements, and State Achievement Council, Washington Student Achievement Council, provides information on the transfer degrees and major related programs and additional resources. It also staffs the transfer liaison for Washington, so if a transfer student does have a concern, that's where that transfer student can voice that. It also holds all the official DTA, AST, and MRP agreements. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Debbie, Janice, and Michael. We appreciate that. Now we will take the rest of the time to open up to any questions. The first question is, does UW accept the DTA? Last we were told they did not. Janice, would you like to take that?
Sure. Yes, UW accepts the DTA. Yes, so a student coming in with a DTA degree will receive junior status as they enter the UW, and they will, depending on what their intended major is, they may or may not have additional credits to take before they apply for their major. Now, accepting the DTA, I think as Michael said earlier, doesn't mean you're automatically admitted to the UW. So you still have to go through the admissions process and be admitted to the UW. But we do have, priority set for students who receive their 2-year degrees at Washington State Community and Technical Colleges. So does that answer your question, I hope?
And just to clarify, all 6 public baccalaureate institutions do take the DTA. So the next question that came in is, can students take a few classes at a 4-year institution and transfer them back to a community college or technical college in order to complete the DTA?
This is Mike. Yeah, we have students do that all the time. So that's real common that students will be at the 4-year institution, and for some reason they want to take some classes at the community college. They can either do that throughout the year. We have students over the summer during break come here and take 1 or 2 classes. What we avoid and encourage students to do is to take the science sequences or any class or any sequence of classes, science, foreign language, math, at the institution where they're at. Otherwise, every institution teaches those sequences somewhat differently, so it's hard for them to transfer in between institutions and complete a sequence of classes. Does that answer?
I'll maybe piggyback on that. Once the student has matriculated at a 4-year school, they've left the 2-year school and become a student at a 4-year school. There are some agreements among some of the 4-year schools that are called reverse transfer agreement. It allows a student to finish at the community college without yet having completed their degree, transfer to a 4-year school, and the agreement, take 4-year school courses, transfer the 2-year school to complete a direct transfer degree, and then reap the benefit school of having their general education complete. So that's something that's fairly new in the Washington realm of higher education and not yet universal at all schools.
The next question is, we accept diversity courses from other community colleges. What is the policy for Washington universities accepting diversity courses for students with a DTA? So either Janice or Debbie, you want to take a shot at that? For one, probably speak to each of you, speak for your sector.
Sure, I can answer that for certainly for UW, and I'm not positive about all the other publics, but for us, we do evaluate our diversity courses through a separate evaluation. It is a graduation requirement, not a general ed requirement for us. And so while I think most of the time those diversity courses are going to be accepted as such, there may be some in that, and our diversity requirement is relatively new, so we're still developing those equivalency lists and so forth. I think the colleges had those requirements in place before we did. So it's a little bit variable, but it is a graduation requirement, so the students have you know, lots of time, and they can certainly use an upper division, and even in many majors use a major requirement to fulfill that diversity requirement if they need to.
Thanks, Janice. This is Debbie. At Seattle Pacific University, we have what we call a CUE requirement, CUE, the Cultural Understanding and Engagement requirement, which also is quite new. As of right now, a final decision hasn't been made on whether that will be covered by the DTA or not. Right now, under the statewide agreement, we have our 2-year grace period for transfer students so that they're not kind of caught unawares that might be something they need. And that decision will be made by our faculty curriculum committee in the next year. However, any student who has a course to transfer in that meets the criteria of our CUE requirement or our diversity requirement, that course certainly would transfer in. It's just a matter of being evaluated and building our equivalency guides.
Great. Before we get to the next question, one of the comments I received, just to clarify, is letting everybody on the webinar know that the AAS degree does transfer to some schools through articulation agreements as well. So, you know, in addition, outside of the conversation around the direct transfer degrees, our 4-year institutions across the state, both public and nonprofit, private institutions have individual articulation agreements with community technical colleges. So that's another opportunity to make sure to see how those things are working with your institution to be aware of as well. So one of the questions that's kind of coming up in general, Debbie and Janice in particular, is that the myth or the perception that some institutions who receive the DTA will, even though they get the student brings to them the degree, they will pick the degree apart or unpack the degree. Could you both speak to how you received the DTA and maybe build on some of the comments you've made earlier for your institutions?
Sure. Excuse me, this week. So we accept the DTA, and we do not do a course-by-course analysis of whether or not all of our specific categories of general education have been met. We accept it in the spirit of the direct transfer agreement, which is that the direct transfer agreement has a core liberal arts component of 60 credits. And even though we match up with our requirements specific, we are going to accept that degree. I'll note that in the ICRC handbook, which we've referred to a couple of times, there is a section where 4-year institutions can state any provisos related to the direct transfer degree. And there are some schools who may have a separate diversity requirement, for instance. Our school, as a faith-based institution, we have a couple of courses related to Christian faith that students take in addition to the traditional general education, and we still require a couple of so that there's understanding of the Christian faith for students who graduate from our Christian university.
Okay, so for the UW, it's a little bit complicated, but I would assure you that if a student comes in with a DTA, they do receive junior status, and they have met the university-wide gen ed requirements with a proviso about our composition class. So let's leave that aside for a minute. But then we do go through actually and look at the course by course. So the students can register as a junior, which is a real advantage to them. But we do look course by course because we need to make sure that they are have met the prerequisite courses that they're going to be taking, and for their may require admission to the major and so forth. So we do an evaluation of course by course to ensure that students have met all of those requirements. Some of our colleges and schools have slightly different requirements. So for instance, in arts and sciences, there is a foreign language requirement, which most students have met in high school or at their two-year school. But so there are some things like that with the colleges, and we do that course by course evaluation. But all of the students coming in with a DTA do get junior status, and they do, receive then that priority and registration, and that with the exception of the composition in some cases, they have met those university-wide general education requirements.
Great, thank you. One question was asked, can we get the PowerPoint presentation mailed to us? My email is at the end of this slide, and so if you would like it to send to you an email, or if you'd like a physical copy sent to you, just drop me a note and we will get something out to you as well. And also, there were times during the presentation where I think the audio may have been a little bit in and out, and I apologize for that from the Council of Presidents. We are having some IT engagement issues here, and so that was ours. So one thing that we will send out with the PowerPoint and the copy of the recording is the script, which is what our presenters kind of read to. So you can also see the context with that as well to help fill in some of those moments when we were a little bit spotty, and my apologies for that technical difficulty. Are any four-year institutions accepting alternative math options like Statway, which gets students to a college-level statistics course over 2 or 3 quarter? Janice?
Speak to that for the public baccalaureate institutions, right? Pilot period. So we are accepting the Statway sequence for a pilot period from the Seattle colleges and from the DeCosmo College. And this year, actually, we're in the process of evaluating that pilot. And depending on how that evaluation goes, there'll be consideration of either continuing the agreement, or adjusting the agreement, or dissolving the agreement. So that hasn't been determined yet, but all of the 6 baccalaureate institutions have signed on to that pilot.
And I would say that at SVU we have as well. I can't speak for the rest of the independent colleges. I don't recall whether all of them agreed during the pilot period to accept Statway. But that we are waiting to see what the final decision will be.
And this is Julie Garver with the Council of Presidents. If anybody would like to see the agreement from our sector, from the public four-year institutions, again, if you email me at the address on the screen, I'll be happy to send you a copy of the agreement so you can just see what both Debbie and Janice referred to, at least language-wise, although it only pertains to the public four-year sector. So the next question is, how does financial aid work when a student from a four-year institution wants to take classes at a community college concurrently? Michael, you want to try that?
Well, there would have to be a financial aid, an agreement between the financial aid offices for them to get, I guess, a maximum financial aid award. So usually that's really difficult for us to do. At Whatcom, we don't have those kinds of articulation agreements with the financial aid. But they can apply for financial aid at each institution. They just wouldn't receive it concurrently. That's my understanding.
Any other comments, Debbie or Janice?
Yeah, our students, they
Oh, Debbie, we can't.
financial services. There, Sam?
Debbie, could you repeat that again? We couldn't quite make it through the hearing.
Okay, can you hear now?
We can, thank you.
Our student financial services office prepares what's called a agreement. Again, it's a cooperative agreement between our school and the community colleges for when students have received permission to take courses concurrently in both places.
Does the UW accept Math 107 or Math 146 within the DTA, or are students denied admission if they don't have Math 98 or Math 141?
Okay. Is that a question for me? I'm not seeing where the question is, but so Math 98 or intermediate algebra is a admission requirement for the University of Washington, you know, the college level math or the quantitative science requirement in the general education is different from the admission requirement. And so requirements are that students have to have had the intermediate algebra. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I'm not seeing it on the list.
You came through the chat mode. So whoever asked that question, if it wasn't answered,
Okay.
if you clarify, that would be great, and we can make sure it's answered. The next question is, and if the panelists are okay, I'll answer it. Do you know which four-year schools have the reverse transfer agreement, or how we can find that information out? So 2 years ago, the legislature passed legislation that requires all 6 public baccalaureate institutions to work with the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges to develop reverse transfer agreements. All 6 public baccalaureate institutions are required to do so by December 31st of this year. 4 of the 6 institutions have those agreements in place, and I would encourage you to reach out to Joyce Hammer at the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. And the remaining 2 are in the processes of working through and finalizing those agreements, and we expect that all 6 will have agreements finalized by the required deadline at the end of the school year, at the end of the calendar year. We have had several students who've come in with 20 Spanish CLEP credits, but only 75 credits total have been awarded DTAs. How are we supposed to be giving them their 90 credits of transfer work? Debbie?
It varies by school, how that is treated. So this is part of the reason that we're working at the state level. Certainly the public schools are working at the state level to try and get some uniformity in the awarding of credit for AP Cambridge. What we do here at SPU is that we would still honor a DTA for a student who came in with more credit than we would, or who was awarded more credit for AP or for a different score for AP than we would award. We would still honor the DTA, but the student would enter with deficit and not with junior. One of them steps that governs for that, we are supposed to treat our native students and transfer students the same way. And one way that we practice that is by awarding credit the same for transfer students as we would for our native students. So if they would come in with their general education completed, they would not yet be a junior, however, when they started here. There are other schools that do different things. I've heard of schools that use ghost credits. Basically, elect that have no academic tie to them, for the extra credits at WOP exams. So you really need to talk to the individual schools.
Any other thoughts, Janice or Michael, before we move on?
No, I think that covers it.
Like, yeah, that covers it.
Right. Yeah, one of the questions was, yes, this is being recorded. There'll be a post-webinar email that'll be sent to you, and we will be posting, hopefully, the recording on YouTube, so that we'll have that link available, hopefully by tomorrow, but if not, early next week. So you should be able to do that. And if for some reason it doesn't come through, please feel free to email me, Julie, and I will get to you about the, make sure you get that link. Dual credit question. If a student has a DTA made up of credit from dual enrollment coursework combined with coursework at a CTC, is the DTA still accepted? So I think it's to the 4 years. Or Michael, go
This
ahead.
is Mike. So, yeah, I mean, if a student taking, we look at all college credit or anything that would transfer in as college credit and would apply that to the coursework or the DTA. So is that a question for the baccalaureates, if they would accept that?
I think this is Janice. I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but if the DTA could have other credit, as Mike said, that was transferred in from either dual enrollment coursework or, testing, AP, etc. And it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a DTA, and it would be treated as such. If the student receives that DTA degree, it's, when they come to transfer, they have the degree and we treat it as such. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question that the person is asking, but that would be my response. I don't know the other.
But I would say, because I think in some ways it piggybacks with that previous question about AP scores being used for the DTA. It's certainly fine for AP or IB or any of the other testing programs to be used for the DTA. But I think what students need to understand is that
Debbie, could you speak a little bit more?
institutions,
There you go.
four-year institutions are going to ask for colleges award Cambridge credit, use their own policies. They can't be asked for college with transfer and the transcript and the transcript. So again, if a student with a combination of trying to think of what other kind of dual credit and dual credit that comes to mind is college and the high school, which is already transferred to the college transcript. The DTA credits in college, whether in high school or later.
Debbie, I think, Debbie, we can't hear you very well. Can you?
Okay.
There you go, right there.
Is that my spot? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, got it. So, when a student starts the DTA,
No, Debbie, I'm sorry, we completely lost you.
okay. I don't know what to do about it.
Nope, that's okay. There you go. It's just
Okay,
coming.
go ahead.
There we go. Well, why don't we move to the next question, and then if we have another question about the dual credit, come up. But I think many of our AST students end up taking 10 to 30 extra credits in order to complete all the coursework necessary to enter at junior standing for engineering programs. However, this means that after they earn the AST2, they are left without financial aid to earn those credits. What would the 4 years recommend to make sure students can transfer with junior standing like their peers while still accessing financial aid?
Well, I would say, you know, from our perspective at the UW, students going into engineering programs, it's really important that they have that solid math and science core and to complete those prerequisites. And that's going to be much more advantageous for them than completing their general education before they come to us. So I would really advise those students to talk with someone at the 4-year that they're intending to transfer to, you know, whether if they're going to WSU or wherever, and to really talk to someone there and make sure that, you know, that advice, getting the AST thing on their math and science, prepare them to enter their engineering program is available to them than getting all those other gen eds completed. And that's what our students who start at the 4-year, they do. They're often taking the last few gen eds in their junior and senior year. You know, because they've spent that freshman and sophomore year really focusing on getting the calculus and the physics done so that they can enter into the major. So I would say to, you know, help guide those students to really just, you know, focus on those prerequisites and not necessarily on that junior status piece because, or completing their gen ed piece, because I think they'll be in a much stronger place with respect to engineering.
And Mike, I have a follow-up question for that. So do the 4 years only accept 90 credits, or will they accept more than 90 credits at the 1 and 200 level when students complete more than 90 credits?
Well, I think, you know, I should know the answer to that question, but I don't want to give the wrong answer. So I would say I think they can have more than 90 credits, but it might depend on what kind of credits they are. There are elective credits in there.
Yeah, with very little exception, only 90 credits transferable.
So Debbie, I don't know what's happening with your microphone, but we can't hear you. Come in.
How does this work?
There we go. Right there.
That work at all?
That works right there. Sorry. I know it's disruptive. I apologize. I think we've lost you again.
Yeah. Can you hear anything?
No. Now I can hear you. As soon as we find out that sweet spot, we lose you. So.
Okay. Can you hear now?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay. Little exception, only 90 credits are transferable from the 2-year schools to all of the 4-year schools.
Okay, great. So a couple of shout outs from other institutions that aren't UW and SPU or SPU. Just going back to the earlier conversation about diversity, Washington State University diversity is automatically fulfilled when the completion of the DTA. With the completion of the DTA, in absence of a DTA, a course-by-course evaluation is done. Also, St. Martin's does have a reverse articulation agreement, so if you're curious about that as well, they do too. The next question is, for international students bringing in transfer credits from overseas, how do those translate into a DTA and then move forward onto a 4-year institution? Michael, do you want to take a shot at that first? If an international student comes to you with transfer credits, how does those translate into a DTA and then move forward to a 4-year institution?
Well, if a student comes to us with extra credits in the DTA, I mean, often students will have more credits than they need for the DTA because they're transferring in between either Prof Tech or they took classes, maybe they switched to MRP, so a business MRP, and so they'll take some additional credit in the business program. So then they graduate with more than 90 credits. And that was, I guess, the reason for my credit 4-year baccalaureate institutions would take. Did that answer your question, or is that more confusing?
Well, I think the question is not so much about the transfer of credits in general, but how does an international student who comes to the United States with credit bring that into at a community college, would bring that to a community college, and let's say they want to pursue a DTA, and then are there any concerns and I would ask Debbie and Janice to have the second part of that question when they get that DTA and transfer to a 4-year institution. So how does the community colleges work with international students around getting the DTA?
Oh, so if an international student is bringing in a credit, then we have them them by an off-site credential evaluator that's approved through NACE. And so we use their accreditation and their course descriptions to see how they transfer into the 2-year college. If not an institution or an institution that's approved through NACE, then we wouldn't use those credits.
And transfer to the 4-year degree then, if the DTA has been conferred, it would be accepted at the 4-year school. The transcript from the 2-year school would be used to transfer any credit from that school. And the international transcripts then would be used for transfer of any of that international credit.
Yes, and that would be
Go ahead, Janice.
very similar to, yeah, I would say that's very similar. What Debbie described is very similar to the way we would handle it as well, that those individual transcripts would be evaluated, but if the student had the DTA, they would receive junior status.
Great. One other thing is that I wanted to know, while predominantly the baccalaureate and applied programs are offered at our wonderful community and technical colleges, Central Washington University also offers a BSA degree in Information Technology and Administrative Management. And Debbie, are you aware of any institutions in your sector that offer BAS degrees?
I am not.
Okay. Great. So our next question is, if we want to create an articulation agreement between a program at our 4-year public university and the local community college, how do we go about that? So Janice?
Well, different, colleges have different practices. And I know the campuses, the UW campuses at Tacoma and Bothell do have articulation agreements. At Seattle, we abide by the statewide agreements, but we don't develop the individual agreements. But I know that all of the other public baccalaureates, I believe, do develop those agreements, and I think it's a matter of working with the admissions and the undergraduate academic affairs or undergraduate studies folks to figure out what works, in that particular area.
The next question is there a way to notate students' high school FL on the community college transcript? FL is an acronym, and I don't know what that the F is an acronym for, so.
I think it's probably foreign language,
Oh, thank you.
I guess.
Mm.
So is there a way to note students' high school foreign language on the community college transcript, Michael?
Well, we don't always see the student's high school transcript, so and we don't really we are limited in what we can notate on the transcript. I'm not sure what benefit that serves, actually.
I can venture a guess. We have a foreign language requirement, as do many schools. That's a graduation requirement. And often students have completed their foreign language requirement in high school. But if they're a transfer student, we're not asking for a high school transcript any longer. So I think this is a question about, could we kind of help students out and help schools out by shortening the trajectory and having that on the community college transcript rather than students having to go back to the high school if they want to show they're done.
Great. The next question is, do non-traditional students, this is to you, Janice, do non-traditional students applying to the University of Washington still need to meet the requirement for 2 years of foreign language?
There's the 2 years of foreign language. Most people have met that through their high school foreign language, and that would be indicated in their high school transcript. But if they're majoring in a major that's outside, that's in a different college, like engineering or the environment, they do not require that.
So this goes back to the question that was asked earlier about math at the University of Washington, Janice, and in particular to clarify the answer regarding math is 098 as an admission requirement. If a student tests higher than math 098 and takes college level math, then transfers to the University of Washington, will they be required to take math 98 at the University of Washington?
That's really an admissions requirement, not a graduation requirement. So the student must math 98, and I think this sounds like a little bit more nuanced question that I'd probably refer to an admissions counselor. But if it's a little bit tricky with the placement testing and so forth. So generally we like to see that math 98 or the equivalent of math 98 on a transcript. For other sort of non-straightforward math issues related to that, that would probably be on a case-by-case, with a admissions counselor would have to evaluate that. But generally, we don't offer anything below 100 level.
So that's coming. Well, one more thing is WSU is also confirming that their regulation with regard to the 90-hour credits is if they take 90 semester hours shall be the maximum allowed by transfer toward a baccalaureate degree. So that's another public baccalaureate perspective as well. So that's the end of the questions that are in the Q&A. I'll just give it a minute or two in case anybody had something that was not asked. As we send out the PowerPoint and the script, if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to email me and I can get you in touch with the experts in the field. We have a wonderful, rich and experienced people on all three of our sectors in the state of Washington. And we are really benefit from being a national leader around transfer degrees. And then also, I think that one of the things that with the work that we have done across our sectors in the state of Washington is to really, if there are issues that you're seeing in the field with students or with how degrees are communicated, or if you have ideas for future webinars that you'd like to have a deeper dive in, please don't